Ask most people what sin is. They'll probably give you a list. Lying, stealing, cheating. Maybe they'll mention the 10 Commandments. Don't murder. Don't commit adultery. Don't take God's name in vain. This is the common understanding of sin. It's a list of rules from God. And when you break one of those rules, you've sinned. It's like cosmic law breaking. You did a bad thing and now you're in trouble. And that's not entirely wrong. Breaking God's commands is certainly part of it. The Bible is full of laws and instructions. But if we stop there, we miss the point entirely. We're looking at the shadow and thinking it's the real thing. The Bible's real definition of sin is so much deeper, so much more personal, and frankly, so much more serious than just breaking a few rules. It's not just about what you do, it's about what you are. It's a condition before it's an action. It's a broken relationship before it's a broken rule. To get at the heart of it, we have to go back to the original language. One of the main Hebrew words for sin in the Old Testament is chata. It doesn't mean to break a rule. It's an archery term. It means to miss the mark. Imagine an archer standing before a target. The goal is to hit the bullseye. The archer draws the bow, aims, and lets the arrow fly. But it veers off course. It misses the center. It might miss the target altogether and thud into the dirt. That is chata. The archer didn't necessarily hate the target. He wasn't trying to destroy the target. He just failed to hit the intended goal. This one image changes everything. Sin isn't just about malicious rebellion, though it can be. It's about falling short of the intended purpose. It's about missing the goal God set for humanity. So what is the goal? What is the mark we're supposed to be hitting? The mark is God's design for human life. It's a life lived in perfect relationship with Him, with each other, with ourselves, and with creation. It's a life of wholeness, peace, justice, and love. The Bible has a word for this too. It's shalom. It means peace, but it's a rich, thick kind of peace. It's the way things are supposed to be. When everything is working in perfect harmony as the Creator intended, sin, then, is any failure to live in that shalom. It's any deviation from the way things are supposed to be. Lying misses the mark of truthfulness that builds trust in relationships. Stealing misses the mark of justice and respect for others. Murder is a catastrophic missing of the mark, destroying the image of God in another person. The rules, the 10 Commandments, aren't an arbitrary list of things God doesn't like. They are descriptions of what missing the mark looks like. They are the guardrails on the road to shalom. God says, don't murder not because he's a cosmic killjoy, but because murder shatters shalom. It destroys relationship. It moves us further from the target. This brings us to the real core of sin. It's relational. Before anything else, sin is a breakdown of relationship. We can see this in the very first story of sin, in the Garden of Eden. The command was simple: don't eat from that one tree. Adam and Eve broke the rule. They ate the fruit. But what was the real issue? Was God just angry that his rule was broken? No. The issue was the reason they broke the rule. A serpent, a deceptive creature, came and suggested that God was holding out on them. He suggested God didn't have their best interests at heart. God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. The sin wasn't really about the fruit. The sin was an act of distrust. They chose to believe the serpent's version of reality over God's. They chose to define good and evil for themselves, rather than trusting their Creator's definition. They broke the relationship of trust with God, and what was the immediate result? Not a lightning bolt from heaven. The first result was shame. They realized they were naked, and they hid. They hid from each other, covering themselves with fig leaves, and then they hid from God. When God came walking in the garden, the man who used to walk with him in perfect communion was now hiding behind a tree. The relationship was broken. That was the essence of the sin. The hiding, the shame, the fear, the blame shifting that followed the woman you put here with me. She gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it. We're all symptoms of that broken relationship. This is the pattern of sin throughout the entire Bible. It's not just a legal transaction, it's a personal betrayal. Think about King David, a man described as being after God's own heart. He commits adultery with Bathsheba. Then, to cover it up, he arranges for her husband, one of his most loyal soldiers, to be killed in battle. He breaks at least 2 of the 10 Commandments in a spectacular way. It's a story of lust, power abuse, and murder. But when the prophet Nathan confronts him and David finally comes to his senses, what does he say in his prayer of repentance? In Psalm 51, he cries out to God, "Against you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight." That's a strange thing to say. He clearly sinned against Bathsheba. He sinned against her husband Uriah. He sinned against his entire nation. But David understood something profound. He understood that while his actions had harmed many people, the ultimate offense was vertical. He had broken faith with his God. He had shattered the relationship. All other sins, all the ways he harmed other people flowed from that primary relational breakdown. Well, he put his own desire in the place where God should have been. That is the root of all sin. It's choosing self over God. It's a declaration of independence from the one who gave us life. This is why idolatry is treated so seriously in the Bible. The very first 2 commandments are about having no other gods and making no idols. To our modern minds, this might seem like an issue of religious preference, but in the biblical view, it's the ultimate sin, the one from which all others spring. Idolatry is giving your ultimate allegiance, your deepest trust, and your primary affection to something that is not God. That something could be a statue made of wood or stone, or it could be money, power, success, a relationship, or even your own intellect. It's putting a created thing in the creator's place. It's fundamentally a relational betrayal. It's like a husband or wife giving their deepest love and loyalty to someone other than their spouse. The problem isn't just that they broke the rule of be faithful. The problem is that they broke the relationship of trust and love. Idolatry is cosmic adultery. It's turning away from the source of all life and love to find fulfillment in a cheap substitute that can never deliver. And when we do that, we miss the mark. Our lives become disordered, we end up hurting ourselves and others. This leads to another layer of understanding sin. The Bible also talks about sin not just as an act, but as a power or a condition. It's something that gets inside us, like a disease. The Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Romans, writes about this in a deeply personal way. He doesn't describe sin as a list of things he occasionally does wrong. He describes it as a force at war within him. He writes, "I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do." He talks about sin living in me. It's a powerful description of the human struggle. We often know what the right thing to do is. We know the mark we're supposed to hit. Like we want to be patient, kind, and loving. But we find ourselves being short-tempered, selfish, and critical. It feels like something else is in the driver's seat. Paul personifies sin with a capital S as a slave master. He says people are slaves to sin. This is a radical idea. It means sin is not just a series of poor choices. It's a bent in our nature. It's a default setting that inclines us away from God and toward ourselves. It's a condition we inherit, a sort of spiritual genetic disorder passed down from the beginning. This is what theologians call original sin. It doesn't mean that a baby is guilty of specific evil acts. It means a baby is born into this broken world with a nature that is already curved in on itself, away from God. We don't start at neutral. We start with a bias toward missing the mark. This explains so much about the world. It explains why history is a long story of violence, greed, and oppression repeated over and over again, no matter how advanced our technology or our philosophies become. It explains why we can't just try harder to be good. You can't fix a crooked foundation by just painting the house. The problem is deeper. If sin is a condition, like a disease, then we don't need a rule book. We need a doctor. We don't need a life coach. We need a savior. We need something to happen to us from the outside, because we can't fix ourselves from the inside. The problem is the inside. When Jesus shows up, he takes his understanding of sin even deeper. He pushes it beyond outward actions to the inner source, the heart. In this Sermon on the Mount, he repeatedly says, "You have heard that it was said, but I tell you." He takes the old rules and reveals their true meaning. "You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'You shall not murder.' But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment." Jesus says the mark isn't just not physically killing someone. The mark is a heart free of contempt and anger toward others. The murder is just the rotten fruit. The anger is the diseased root. He does the same with adultery. "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." Again, he pushes past the external action to the internal desire. The sin doesn't begin when you break the rule. The sin begins in the heart's intention. You have already missed the mark internally long before any action takes place. This is why Jesus was so hard on the religious leaders of his day, the Pharisees. On the outside, these men were the best rule keepers around. They followed the law meticulously. They didn't steal, they didn't murder, they tithed down to the last mint leaf from their herb gardens. By the breaking rules definition of sin, they were the most righteous people alive. But Jesus called them whitewashed tombs. Beautiful on the outside, but full of death and decay on the inside. He said they cleaned the outside of the cup, but inside they were full of greed and self-indulgence. They had mastered the rules, but completely missed the relationship. Their hearts were far from God. Their religion was a performance designed to earn them honor and status, not an expression of love for God and their neighbor. They had hit the wrong target perfectly. They were excellent archers aiming at the bullseye of self-righteousness, and they nailed it every time. But they completely missed the true target of love, mercy, and justice. Jesus showed that it's possible to obey all the rules and still be profoundly, deeply sinful. Because sin is a matter of the heart. It's about what you love, what you trust, and what you serve. There is one more crucial aspect of sin that our simple rule-based definition almost always misses. We tend to think of sin as doing bad things, but the Bible is equally concerned with the good things we failed to do. This is often called the sin of omission. It's not about the wrong we commit, but the good we omit. Jesus tells a story about a man who was beaten, robbed, and left for dead on the side of the road. A priest comes by, sees the man, and crosses to the other side of the road. A Levite, another religious figure, does the same thing. They didn't do anything wrong to the man. They didn't beat him, they didn't rob him, they simply did nothing. They broke no explicit rule in the Ten Commandments. But then a Samaritan, a person despised by the religious establishment, comes along. He is moved with compassion. He bandages the man's wounds, puts him on his own donkey, takes him to an inn, and pays for his care. Jesus asks, "Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man?" The answer is obvious. The sin of the priest and the Levite was not in their actions, but in their inaction. They failed to love. They failed to show mercy. They saw a human being in need, and they chose to walk away. They missed the mark of love. Their hearts were hard. That was their sin. Jesus makes this point even more powerfully in another story in Matthew 25. He describes the final judgment. He separates people into two groups, like a shepherd separating sheep from goats. To the sheep, on his right, he says, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." The righteous are confused. They ask when they ever did these things for him. Jesus replies, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Then he turns to the goats on his left. He condemns them not for what they did, but for what they failed to do. "For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink." Their sin was omission. They saw need, and they did nothing. They failed to actively love and care for the vulnerable. This radically redefines sin. Sin isn't just about avoiding a list of don'ts. It is fundamentally about failing the great do. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Any failure to actively love is missing the mark. So what is the Bible's real definition of sin? It's not one simple thing. It's a complex and tragic reality with many layers. It is breaking God's good laws. But it's so much more. It's missing the mark of God's perfect design for human life. It's a broken relationship, a fundamental distrust of our Creator, choosing our own way instead of His. It's idolatry, giving our ultimate allegiance to something other than the one true God. It's a condition, a disease of the soul, a power that enslaves us from within. It's a matter of the heart, where anger and lust are as serious as murder and adultery. And it's a failure to act, a refusal to love, a closing of our hearts to the needs of others. Sin, in the end, is any turning away from God, who is the source of all life, goodness, truth, and love. The rules are there to show us what that turning away looks like in practice. They are the diagnostic tool, but the disease itself is the turning. It's a fundamental orientation of the self toward the self and away from God and others. It's choosing the creature over the Creator. Understanding sin this way is not meant to crush us with guilt. It's meant to give us a realistic diagnosis of the human condition. It's meant to show us why our own efforts to fix ourselves always fall short. And we don't just need to try harder to follow the rules. We need a new heart. We need a relationship to be restored. We need to be rescued from the power that holds us captive. When we see how deep the problem is, we can begin to understand why the solution offered in the Bible is so radical. It's not a self-help program, it's a rescue mission. It's about God Himself stepping into our brokenness to heal our disease and restore our relationship with Him. The definition of sin is bleak, but it sets the stage for a story of grace that is more profound and more hopeful than we could ever imagine. It shows us our deep need for something, or someone, outside of ourselves to make things right again, to put us back on target, and to finally bring us home to the shalom we were created for.